I'm very excited to welcome our next guest, Karol Markowicz. She writes for the New York Post. She writes for Spectator. She's on Fox all the time. She's on Newsmax all the time. And she's on Twitter at Karol, Karol. Karol, thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, Grace. Thanks so much for having me.
Karol, so let's talk about that first cut. Because when I was watching the town hall and I see that first cut, I thought of what you said about the forever pandemic, because you wrote a brilliant piece in the New York Post where you said, we cannot have this go on forever. And tell people a little bit about that.
So as the vaccines roll out, I'm very encouraged about seeing the end of this thing, about stopping to wear masks, about seeing my friends as much as I want again, about seeing people's faces, about living life again, about my kids going back to school full time. Let's put that right at the top of the list. But I don't see that same zeal for the end people, and I keep seeing downplaying of the vaccines as if they're not a miracle, as if they're not a scientific marvel, but they are. And so I'm very worried about this forever pandemic mindset, where even after we're mostly vaccinated, that we'll still be wearing masks and we'll still be social distancing because people are afraid and they can't let go of it. And that anxiety is very hard to let go of. And I get that, and I want to move people away from it.
Yeah, I saw that you tweeted today something I found interesting. I wasn't sure where it was from, but you tweeted a quote that said, anxiety can be habit forming and we need to make a conscious decision to go back to our regular lives.
Right. That was from a New York Times piece about schools still not being open in Oregon, and how people are just so scared, even though, study after study, scientist after scientist have told us that kids largely don't get this, and schools are not a place of active transmission. It's very rare to see clusters form in schools. So we have the situation where this anxiety is habit forming, and we see it actually happening all around us. And so my goal is definitely to talk people down from it and to say that as soon as we get vaccinated, you can start living your own life again. You can go back to the way things were, and you don't have to live in fear and live with a mask on and live not seeing your family and your friends.
Well, I'm glad you're doing that, because we know the president is not. But one thing he did last night, and I don't think he meant to do this, but he kind of tore up his entire argument about keeping these schools shut down. I want to play a little bit of this for you, Karol. This is cut 8.
Well, first of all, honey, what's your first name?
Layla.
Layla. Beautiful name. First of all, kids don't get get COVID very often. It's unusual for that to happen. They don't. And the evidence so far is children aren't the people most likely to get COVID, number one.
Karol, when you heard that, were you screaming at your television like, yeah, we know, open up the schools?
Right. I mean, I've been saying that since spring. It's so wild to me that nobody's taking responsibility for the fact that kids have lost a year, and yet Joe Biden says something like that, and it's correct, of course, but it's a little bit past the time when you should be saying that. And even now, even with that, his goal is still so small to open schools mostly in 100 days by May. May is usually when we're closing schools down for the summer, and yet that's the goal right now, to open it around then. I frequently have smoke coming out of my ears.
But Karol, the other thing that I've noticed is there doesn't seem to be a real cohesion with this administration. On one hand, you have Jen Psaki saying our idea of opening schools is having 1 day a week. And then Biden comes out yesterday and says that was, that was a miscommunication. And then he says he wants to keep the schools open all summer. So it's like, where are they going with this?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. First of all, I heard that thing about keeping the schools open all summer, and I'm like, is this one of those things where we're going to have to hear that Biden was talking in his personal capacity or something? Because this makes no sense. You're telling me the teachers' unions are going to just be like, oh, okay, no problem, we'll teach through the summer. Anybody who thinks that that's going to be an acceptable solution for teachers' unions has not been paying attention. Absolutely insane, not going to happen. What you might see in the summer is they're going to hire these aides or monitors who are obviously not unionized, therefore completely safe from the coronavirus, to sit in rooms with kids on laptops while they do work. Fine, I might see that. But the idea that teachers are going to come in and teach throughout the summer when they weren't supposed to or not scheduled to is absolutely not happening.
I'm talking to Karol Markowicz. You can read her stuff at the New York Post and at Spectator, as well as some other publications. Karol, my other question for you is that he tends to say this, that, the schools, he doesn't know what's happening, and, the schools are going to open and then they're not going to open, and then, whatever.
Yeah.
But what I've been noticing on Twitter is that a lot of these blue check marks and other people, whether it's, Cuomo people or whoever, they keep trying to gaslight parents into convincing them that, like, oh, no, schools are open. You just don't understand our version of what opening means.
Yeah, Randy Weingarten, head of the National Teachers Unions, she said yesterday that schools can open when they hit some, key safety measures, just like New York City schools. And my jaw just dropped, and I thought, New York City schools, if that's the barometer for openness, we're in big, big trouble. New York City schools are largely closed. Elementary schools are only open on a part-time basis. There's a few that are open full-time. Middle schools have been closed since November. High schools are closed. All of this is absolutely no indication that anyone else should follow what New York City is doing. If we want to follow someone, let's follow Florida. Let's follow Texas. Their schools have been open since the fall, and they're open full time, and they're open in a normal way, and they didn't, reinvent the wheel. They didn't put in new filtration systems. They're largely not social distancing. They are wearing masks in everywhere that I've heard. But that's it. It's not some crazy system designed by teachers' unions to keep them home.
And I just find it amazing that Joe Biden, who's 78 years old, and he's probably going to be a one-term president, that he's afraid to stand up to these teachers' unions. I mean, who else is he going to be bullied by if he can be bullied by them?
Oh, absolutely. That's the thing. A lot of people refer to powerful teachers' unions. Teachers' unions can't by themselves be powerful. Politicians have to give them power. And in places like New York, that's exactly what they've done. They've given them power to run the system. And what you're seeing on a national level right now is teachers' unions deciding scientific policy. When the head of the CDC came out and said that teachers don't need to be vaccinated to go back to school, she had to rewrite that. And Jen Psaki said that she was talking in her personal capacity. And then she sat down to make policy with teachers' unions, not with scientists, but with teachers' unions about how to reopen schools. So they're running the show, and anybody who doesn't think so has not been paying attention. At this point, Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago is aware of it, and she even admits that that's the case. So that's where we are.
I mean, Carol, TJ Ducklo was speaking in his personal capacity. It didn't end well for him. He had to resign. No, Carol, my next question for you has to be, a lot of these people, when they were running, when the Biden administration was campaigning, they were saying, they knew everything. They had all the answers. Trump was doing absolutely everything wrong. And it was easy for them to make their decisions because all they had to do was say, okay, what's Trump doing? We're going to go with the opposite. Like, what medicine does Trump think works? Right. We'll say it's going to kill people. What does Trump want to do? We'll do the exact opposite. But now that they're in power, I'm noticing that there's a big, mystery, a lot of shrugging shoulders. We're not sure. It's mysterious. And I want you to listen to this cut. This is Andy Slavitt, the White House COVID advisor. Listen to this cut 24.
States like Florida and California basically in lockdown, and their numbers aren't that different from Florida.
Well, good morning, Stephanie. Look, there's so much of this virus that we think we understand, that we think we can predict, that's just a little bit beyond our explanation. What we do know,
beyond our explanation, but yet they're very confident in keeping the kids out of school.
That's right. I think the question of Florida should be put to every single COVID expert on our TV. Why is Florida not seeing mass deaths? I spent some time in Florida. Nobody wears masks outside, which I think is the same thing to do. I'm actually very careful, and I take COVID very seriously, but I don't understand the point of wearing a mask when you're alone on the street, like I see all the time in New York. I mean, COVID's not going to jump out from behind the tree and get you. You get it from other people. So if you're not around other people, why are you wearing a mask? And so, I want to hear more about why Florida is doing so great. The kids are playing sports without masks. The kids are in school every day. People are dining inside restaurants. They're in bars. There's not a lot of social distancing going on. Why is Florida doing so well while no one else is? And the answer that I often get is, the weather. Well, California has very similar weather. How come California is not doing as well?
And something that I never really thought of, which I should have, but people oftentimes will compare the numbers between Florida and New York and California. And someone pointed out the other day on Twitter, they said, factor in that Florida has a lot of old people there. That's where many old people in this country go to Florida. So they're doing a good job in general, or a better job than New York and California. But then when you add on that factor, it really makes it seem like they're doing something right.
Right, and they also have more people, 2 million more people than New York State. So if you add that, it's really impressive. It's just there's no two ways about this. Lockdowns don't work, and Florida has decided to shun lockdowns, and they're having better results because of it. I mean, part of it, I think, is, and I've written about this before, but I don't think we can maintain full-on masking all the time and staying home all the time. And that's the problem with lockdowns or these mask mandates. They don't take human nature into account. We need to see each other. We're, social creatures. And you can keep saying, stay home, mask up, but it's impossible to do long term. And so what I think Florida found, and I think what Texas has found and other states, is a happy medium. People do wear masks. They do keep their distance in certain situations, but they don't do it all the time. And that makes it easier for them to do it in actual risky situations.
And Karol, I'm speaking with Karol Markowicz from the New York Post, and her article is called "The Vaccines Will End the Pandemic, Whether Dr. Fauci Likes It or Not." I want to end with this last question, and I'm going to quote from your article. You said, "Now is our time for choosing. Do we want to take the forever pandemic path, or do we accept and celebrate the miraculous science behind the vaccines and move on from this painful episode?" My question for you, Karol, is, do you think the Democrats want to move on from this painful episode?
I think some do. I think that there's definitely a contingency of people on the left who have gotten really comfortable staying home and having their Amazon packages brought to them and having their food delivered and having just, time with their families, and everything's really cozy and they have childcare. And I get that this has not been a really bad time for a lot of people. I think there's a whole class of people that I call the pajama class, and I agree. I'm in that pajama class with them. Anybody who's staying home in their sweatpants and still getting paid, we're in that pajama class. But this has been a really tough time for many, many Americans. And I think it's time for that pajama class to look beyond just their own happiness and see how damaging this has been to so many people.
I was just going to say, Karol, but I didn't want to blow your cover. I was on one of the Clubhouse groups a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, and it was all about New York and whether New York was dead or not. And I hopped on. I'm not from New York, but I saw you were in there, and I thought, okay, I'll give this a listen. And you mentioned the pajama class. And I thought that's a perfect way to put it, because a lot of people think, well, work from home, be safe. You have to care about other people. You can't be so reckless. And it's like, well, you can afford to live like that. Some people don't have that option.
Right, absolutely. And I've been saying that all along, that the people who are most outspoken on keeping lockdowns going have absolutely not suffered because of those lockdowns.
Exactly. Karol Markowicz, thank you so much for joining us. Follow Karol at Karol. We'll be back on the other side. This is The Grace Curley Show.
The Grace Curley Show will be right back.